Marcus Johnson lived in a busy part of Chicago, a place where people worked hard every day to take care of their families. Marcus was a good father. He loved his son Jamal very much. Jamal was 16 years old, full of energy and dreams. He liked to play basketball with his friends and wanted to be a teacher one day. Marcus worked 2 jobs to give Jamal a better life. He believed in honesty, kindness, and that one day, Jamal would make the world better. One late afternoon, Jamal was walking home after school. He was talking with a friend when they saw some police officers nearby. The officers looked serious. Jamal's friend told him to be careful and not cause any trouble. Jamal nodded. He wanted to go home and finish his homework. Suddenly, one police officer called Jamal over. Jamal was confused. He stopped and asked, "Yes, officer. What's wrong?" The officer said something about a report of a young man matching Jamal's description. Jamal felt nervous, but stayed calm. He did not want to fight or run, just wanted to understand what was happening. But then, things changed quickly. Another officer came and started shouting at Jamal. The officers began to push him roughly. Jamal tried to explain, but they did not listen. They grabbed him and pushed him to the ground. Jamal's friends watched in fear. They tried to call out, but the officers did not stop. They hit Jamal several times. People nearby stopped and watched, shocked and scared. Marcus was at work when he got a call. It was Jamal's mother. Her voice was shaking. "Marcus, Jamal has been hurt by the police. He is in the hospital. Please come quickly." Marcus dropped everything and ran to the hospital. His heart was pounding. He could not believe what he was hearing. How could his son, who was so kind and gentle, be hurt like this? At the hospital, Marcus saw Jamal lying still. Machines were beeping, and doctors were working hard to help him. Jamal was in a coma. Marcus held his hand, feeling his son's cold skin. Tears rolled down his face. He whispered, "Please wake up, Jamal. Please come back to me." Doctors told Marcus that Jamal's injuries were very serious. They said Jamal had a concussion and many bruises. It would take time to know if he would recover fully. Marcus felt a heavy weight on his chest. He wanted to cry out, but he held his pain inside. He knew he had to be strong for Jamal. Marcus tried to talk to the police department. He wanted to know why his son was hurt, but the officer said Jamal had caused trouble. They said they were only doing their job. Marcus knew this was not true. Jamal had never caused trouble in his life. The police department closed the case quickly. They said there was no need for an investigation. Marcus felt alone and angry. How could the people who were supposed to protect his family hurt his son? How could they lie and ignore what really happened? The community where Marcus lived was angry too. Many people had seen the officers' actions and were scared of the police. They talked quietly about unfair treatment and fear. Despite the pain and fear, Marcus did not lose hope. He decided to fight for Jamal and for all families who suffered like his. He talked to neighbors, friends, and local leaders. They promised to help. Marcus wanted the truth to come out. He wanted the officers who hurt Jamal to be held responsible. But the road ahead would be hard. At night, Marcus sat by Jamal's hospital bed. He held his son's hand and told him stories about his dreams. He spoke of a future where Jamal would be free from fear and pain. He promised to never stop fighting. Marcus knew that love was the strongest power he had. It gave him strength to face the challenges ahead. Outside the hospital window, the city lights shone brightly. Life went on for many people, but for Marcus and Jamal's family, time seemed to stand still. One thing was clear. Their lives had changed forever. But Marcus's spirit was strong. He would make sure that Jamal's story was heard. Work hard so no other family would suffer the same pain. This was the beginning of a long journey, a journey of courage, hope, and justice. Marcus was ready to take the first step. ChatGPT said. Marcus felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he refused to give up. His son Jamal was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life, and Marcus knew he had to do everything he could to bring justice. The police department had ignored his pleas, and the officers responsible still walked free. It was clear the system was protecting them. Marcus realized that if he wanted to see justice, he would have to fight harder and smarter. The next day, Marcus started reaching out to people who might help. He called a local civil rights group that worked to stop police abuse. They listened to his story carefully and promised to support him. Marcus also talked to neighbors who had seen what happened. Many were scared to speak out, but some agreed to tell the truth if it meant stopping the violence. Marcus began recording their testimonies on his phone. Each voice was important, and he wanted to gather as much proof as he could. Marcus also used social media to share Jamal's story. He posted pictures of Jamal in the hospital and wrote about what happened. Soon, many people in Chicago and beyond started to notice. Some shared his posts. Others wrote messages of support. Marcus was surprised by how many strangers cared about his son and the fight for justice. The story touched hearts, and people wanted to help. Local news reporters reached out to Marcus. They wanted to hear his side of the story. Marcus agreed to speak with them because he knew this was a chance to bring more attention to the problem. He told the reporters about the night Jamal was hurt and how the police had refused to take responsibility. The news showed pictures of Jamal in the hospital, and the story spread quickly. Marcus hoped this would force the police department to act, but the officers who hurt Jamal stayed on the job. They were still part of the police force, protected by rules and silence. Marcus felt frustrated. It seemed like the system was designed to protect bad behavior. Some people warned him to be careful. They said fighting the police was dangerous. Marcus knew this was true, but he could not back down. He had to protect his son and others who might suffer the same fate. Marcus began attending community meetings. People gathered to talk about police violence and racism. Many shared their stories of unfair treatment and fear. Marcus felt less alone. The community's anger turned into strength. Together they planned peaceful protests and marches to demand change. Marcus became a leader, speaking about justice and safety for all. At one meeting, a local lawyer offered to help Marcus. She said she could guide him through the legal process and help file complaints. Marcus was grateful for the support. He learned about how to request records, file lawsuits, and ask for investigations. Each step was difficult and slow, but Marcus was patient. He wanted to use every legal tool available to hold the officers accountable. Meanwhile, Jamal's condition was still serious. Marcus spent many hours at the hospital praying and hoping for his son to wake up. He stayed strong in front of Jamal, but cried in private. The pain was hard, but Marcus found comfort in the community's support and the growing attention to his son's case. As the protests grew, some city officials started to pay attention. They promised to review the case and improve police training. Marcus knew promises were easy to make but hard to keep. He kept pushing for real action, asking for clear answers and consequences for the officers. Marcus also connected with other families who had lost loved ones or been hurt by police. They shared advice and comforted each other. This network gave Marcus's new hope and courage. He realized this fight was bigger than just Jamal. It was about changing a system that had long ignored pain and injustice in their community. Every day, Marcus's story became more known. People started asking questions. The police department could no longer hide behind silence. The pressure was growing, but Marcus knew the battle was just beginning. He was ready to keep fighting, not just for his son, but for every family, hoping for justice and respect. Through his pain, Marcus found a new purpose. His fight became a symbol of courage, a voice for those who had been silenced. Chicago watched as a father's love sparked a movement that could change lives. Marcus's journey was far from over, but with each step, he moved closer to the justice his son and community deserved. Marcus knew that simply speaking out and gathering support was not enough to stop the officers who hurt his son. The system seemed built to protect them, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. He began to quietly gather more information. About the officers involved, Marcus spent hours researching their past behavior, looking for any complaints, reports, or stories that showed they had acted wrongly before. With the help of the lawyer and some trusted friends, Marcus collected documents and testimonies from people who had experienced similar problems with these officers. Some neighbors who had been afraid to speak now found courage to share their stories with Marcus. They described times when the officers had used harsh words, acted unfairly, or treated people badly. Marcus realized that these officers had a history of trouble, and now he had evidence. Marcus also began attending police oversight meetings and public forums. These meetings were usually quiet and controlled by officials, but Marcus spoke up whenever he could. He asked tough questions and demanded answers. His presence was noticed by city officials and the police department. They began to realize that Marcus was not going away. At the same time, Marcus kept building his network of support. Community leaders, activists, and local organizations joined his cause. They helped organize peaceful protests and events to raise awareness about police misconduct. Marcus's story inspired many people who had faced similar challenges to stand together and demand change. One by one, the pressure on the officers increased. Internal investigations were opened. The officers who had beaten Jamal were put on leave, while the city looked deeper into their actions. Marcus learned that some officers were being reassigned to other duties or forced to resign quietly. It was not the full justice he wanted, but it was progress. Marcus felt a mix of relief and caution. He knew the system could still protect bad officers in secret, but this time he was prepared. Marcus and his lawyer kept pushing for full transparency and accountability. They talked to reporters, shared documents, and made sure the public knew what was happening behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Marcus never stopped caring for Jamal. He visited the hospital daily, holding his hand and talking softly. Jamal was still in a coma, but Marcus believed his son could hear him. He promised Jamal that he would not stop fighting until justice was done and their community was safe. The community began to heal slowly. People saw that when they worked together, they could challenge powerful forces. Marcus's courage showed others that no matter how hard the fight, change was possible. His determination brought hope to many families who had felt forgotten. Marcus also began working with city leaders to create new programs for police training and community safety. He wanted to build trust between officers and residents. He believed that true change required understanding and respect on both sides. Marcus dreamed of a future where no family would have to suffer like his. Through his journey, Marcus learned about strength, patience, and the power of a father's love. The officers who had hurt Jamal were no longer as free as before. Marcus had made them vanish from the places where they could harm others. But his work was not done. He was ready for whatever came next, knowing that every step forward was a victory for justice and peace. The change in the police department was slow but real. One by one, the officers who had harmed Jamal were removed from active duty. Some were reassigned to jobs where they had no contact with the public, while others chose to resign quietly. The police department, feeling the pressure from the public and city leaders, promised to improve how officers treated the community. Marcus saw these changes as a small victory, but knew there was still much work to be done. He began meeting with community leaders and local officials to talk about ways to rebuild trust between the police and the people they served. The neighborhood was tired of fear and pain. People wanted to feel safe again, but that would take time. Meanwhile, Jamal slowly began to show signs of improvement. The coma that held him for weeks finally lifted. First he was weak and confused, but every day he grew stronger. Marcus and Jamal's family were filled with hope and gratitude. Jamal started physical therapy and speech therapy. It was a long road, but Jamal's spirit was strong, and Marcus believed his son would recover fully. The community came together. To support Jamal and his family, neighbors brought food, helped with chores, and visited the hospital. The story of Marcus's fight and Jamal's recovery inspired many. People who had felt powerless began to speak up about their own experiences. The protests and gatherings continued, but now they carried a message of healing and hope. Worked with local schools to start programs teaching young people about their rights and how to interact safely with police. He believed that education could prevent future violence and build a better future. Marcus also spoke at community centers and city halls, reminding everyone that justice was more than punishment. It was about fairness, respect, and healing. The police department began new training programs focused on respect, empathy, and community partnership. Officers were encouraged to listen and build relationships rather than control and punish. Though some officers resisted the changes, many saw the value in better understanding the people they served. As the city worked to heal, Marcus never forgot the pain of what happened. The scars on Jamal's body and spirit reminded everyone of the cost of injustice. But Marcus's fight became a symbol of hope. He showed that one father's love could spark a movement for change. He taught the community that even in the darkest times, courage and unity could light the way forward. Marcus continued to support other families facing similar struggles. He helped connect them with lawyers, counselors, and support groups. The city of Chicago began to listen more carefully to its citizens, especially those who had been ignored for too long. Though the past could not be erased, the future held promise. Jamal's recovery was a sign that healing was possible. Marcus's fight had made a difference, not just for his son, but for the entire community. The neighborhood started to feel safer, stronger, and more connected. Through it all, Marcus kept believing in justice. He knew that change was not easy, and it did not happen overnight. But step by step, the community was moving toward a better tomorrow. Marcus's journey was far from over, but the hope he brought was really a new beginning for Jamal. For the neighborhood, and for everyone who dreamed of fairness and peace. ChatGPT said, months passed since the terrible night when Jamal was hurt. The city of Chicago was changing slowly, but Marcus could see real progress. Some of the officers who had hurt his son were now facing official charges. They were removed from the police force and could no longer harm anyone else. The court cases were difficult, and justice took time. But Marcus felt a deep relief, knowing that these men were held responsible. Jamal's recovery continued each day. He was still weak in many ways, but his spirit was strong. Physical therapy helped him regain strength, and speech therapy worked to bring back his voice. Marcus and Jamal's family stayed close, giving him love and hope. They celebrated every small step forward, knowing that healing was a journey with many challenges. Marcus did not stop working for the community. He spoke at events, schools, and city meetings. He told his story not just to share pain, but to inspire change. Marcus wanted others to know that even when things seem unfair, one person's courage can make a difference. He helped create programs that supported families affected by police violence and worked to improve the relationship between the police and the people they served. The community around Marcus began to feel safer. New laws were passed to increase police accountability. Training for officers improved, focusing on respect and understanding. Neighborhood groups worked with the police to build trust. Marcus was proud to see that what started as a personal fight had grown into a movement for change, though the scars from that night remained. Marcus and Jamal learned to live with hope. The trauma had changed them, but it had also made their bond stronger. Marcus's love for his son was the fuel that kept him going through the darkest times. Together, they faced the future with courage. Marcus knew that not every story ended with justice or healing, but he believed in the power of standing up and speaking out. His journey showed others that they were not alone and that change was possible. The pain would never disappear completely, but it could be a source of strength to help others. As the years passed, Marcus and Jamal continued to work for their community. They shared their story to remind people that love, courage, and persistence could overcome even the greatest challenges. Marcus's fight had made the officers who harmed his son vanish from power. But more importantly, it had helped build a future where families like his could live with dignity and safety. This was not just a story about pain or injustice. It was a story about hope, strength, and the power of a father's love. Marcus's journey became a light for many, proving that even when the world seems unfair, one person's courage can change everything.